Well, on this week's episode of Bonehead, I'm so excited because we have Mr. Jeffrey Reddick, or Mr. Reddick.
Just call me Jeffrey,
That's okay.
Mister. I love the manners from the South, But
You and I will talk about that in a minute. You know,
yeah,
Kentucky is one of those
Jeffrey
that,
makes me Jeffrey makes me feel young.
well, we'll talk about that in a minute.
I'm
So
from a different side of Kentucky than you all, so y'all kiss my ass.
he's from 15 minutes outside of Louisville. That's basically southern Indiana. You know how this
Oh my God, you're city slicker, you.
Absolutely.
I know.
I grew up in a
Wait,
trailer. We had an outhouse. I don't want to hear it.
what kills me is, so you're from Jackson, Kentucky, which sounds nice,
Yeah.
but it's from southeastern Kentucky. I'm from Waddy, Kentucky.
Why?
Waddy, W-A-D-D-Y.
He shot
It
his
sounds
waddy.
like it sounds like I'm in the mountains somewhere. I'm literally 30 minutes from Louisville.
That's hysterical.
I grew up in the hills in Leslie County in Hyden, about 40 minutes from where you grew up. But that's okay. What we're going to do is ask a few questions, get into this, but I've got to tell you a story. So you and I have met. We met about 17 years ago at a little film festival in Lexington, Kentucky called MEIC. Do you
Yeah.
have any recollection of ever being there? Honestly.
If I'm honest, I don't.
No, that's okay.
But
I didn't expect
but-
you to remember me. I'm just saying, I was wondering if you had any recollection of ever
what did that stand for?
I don't remember.
There weren't that many conventions in Kentucky.
No.
Was Keith Carradine at that one?
Yes.
John Carradine, I mean. Okay, I do remember that one.
And
Absolutely.
I got a story out of that later that night because Chad and I had a short film, and my girlfriend, but who would become my wife, was a producer and writer on it too. We had a short film playing there. You and I actually had a long conversation about directing. Doesn't matter. I don't expect you to
What was
remember.
your short film?
What'd you say?
What was your short film?
Oh, it's called Reminiscence. It's the only good thing we ever did, Chad. What do you think?
Yeah.
Yeah, probably. We did one a couple of years ago that kind of pretty much just killed everything. We were like, we may just go into podcasting. But anyway, so I was really proud of that one. But this interview's about you. Yeah, later on, if we get into it, remind me to tell you what John Carradine did in the lobby that night.
I remember he got so drunk and they slid down Alpha's chair and they had to carry him off.
Okay, well, you must have been there later. They had to remove him off the piano too. We were down there hanging out.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
He's a great talent. He was a great talent though, but yeah.
He was a great talent. So I've been racking my brain, trying to figure out how to do this. But so we knew each other. We started this 3 or 4 years. How does it take Bob Singleton to get you on this damn show?
Because I honestly, because I don't have like an assistant or anything like that. Like I'm so busy all the time that I just lose track, and I have ADD. So I just like lose track of shit. And I mean, stuff. No, I can say shit.
You can say shit. You can say shit, fuck, whatever you like.
The funny thing is I don't curse in real life, but if you get me on a podcast or if I'm talking to a classroom of children, no, not children, that part. But if you get me on a podcast, I tend to curse, but no, but I just forgot that you'd reached out to me. So I was talking to Bob and he's like, oh, he's reached, and I looked through my old emails and I was like, crap, I never got back to him. So
okay, I did it 2 or 3 times. Real quick. Let me tell you other funny story. There was 2 people when we started this almost 3.5 years ago. And I said, there's 2 people we got to get. One of them is from Eastern Kentucky, like I am. Chad was like, yeah, we got Jeffrey Reddick will do the show because we have the Eastern Kentucky buy-in. We have had so many people till we finally got you. And the other one we just got a month ago, who's also from Kentucky, Todd Farmer.
Oh, I love Todd. He's like a good friend of mine. I adore him. He's amazing.
Right. Well, Todd did over 2 hours with us and was so happy that we let him talk politics.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I don't know how Arizona's going tonight, but I might be happy to talk politics too.
Well, we're too liberal. We live in Lexington, and we're two liberal folks in Kentucky. I always tell people we both work at a certain university in Lexington. You probably know which one. And I always tell faculty when they come here, it's like, oh, Kentucky. So I was like, you don't know what real Kentucky is. Lexington is not real Kentucky.
Yeah, I think people in this bubble that we live in here, like, forget what the other areas are like.
the thing, and I won't even get off on this, but or go off on this but the thing that frustrates me is Mitch, because Mitch McConnell is the second most powerful man in government, and he has done shit for like rural Kentucky, like lowest in education, lowest in healthcare, lowest in economy. Like he's done nothing for the state except for the big cities. And people just keep voting him in. And it's like, I don't care if you vote for a Republican or a Democrat, but vote for somebody who's going to help you. Like, he makes millions and millions and millions of dollars a year and gets hundreds of millions for Kentucky, but I don't know where it doesn't go to Eastern Kentucky. I'll tell you that much. But they keep voting for him. It's just so frustrating.
Well, you come in, you know how this works. They come in, they say 5 things about coal and how they're eventually going to bring coal back. And everybody says, well, and they ain't going to kill them babies in coal.
Yeah.
Yeah. Guns.
And guns.
Guns.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry. Chad's correct. So there's the 3 issues, and then they just vote Republican, straight ticket.
Yeah, I know. It's
frustrating. Believe
it's frustrating.
Yeah, it's frustrating. Yeah. So back to Bob Singleton.
Yes,
he's been on the show. He's a friend of mine. Actually, our last short film, The Third Degree, Bob was the narrator. So
cool.
To tell you that I like Bob a lot, he's just batshit nuts, which is why I like Bob a lot.
Yeah.
What's the best story you have about Bob? Because I'm going to play this later. I know this is a question you never get. So on a podcast, what's your best? Because you were roommates at Berea, correct?
We stayed together for a little bit, but we were in theater together. I don't. You know what? He was such a good actor, and I had a huge crush on him. I mean, that was ridiculous. Straight fucker. No, I'm kidding. No, but
I love it. I love it. Keep going.
I don't have any crazy Bob stories because he was very serious about acting. He was very serious about his craft, and he was the sweetest guy. We shot I shot a movie on VHS, like a horror movie that me and a bunch of the people in the theater class were in. And, of course he played the studly cool guy. But I can't think of any, aren't any crazy stories because he's just a real stand-up, cool guy. He really is. I just thought he was super hot, in college. He still is hot, but you know what I'm saying?
Don't tell him that. Don't tell him.
Oh, he knows.
He knows. So yeah, it came out when Bob was on the show. We did a show on theater, and then he started talking about his roommate and him trying to tell his roommate, I think horror is dead, man. Wouldn't you like to do something else?
Oh yeah, he did. Yeah, that is funny. No, because I've always loved horror. I'm wearing my Berea College.
I saw that
volleyball shirt because I spoke to the girls volleyball team, which is awesome at Berea. I love Berea. But yeah, no, I have always loved horror, and Bob did give me that sage advice, and I was like, but I've always known that horror is kind of consistent in the entertainment industry. It's just it gets really popular, and then people start making copies of the popular movie, and then it kind of dies down a little bit, and then it gets popular again.
I gotta ask though. I've read for several articles where you saw Nightmare on Elm Street and that was your inspiration. But why wasn't Alone in the Dark not your inspiration?
Well, no, the funny thing is, because I still remember it. Like me and my friend Tony Calhoun, we were too poor to go to the drive-in, but he lived behind the drive-in, and so we could get on his dad's semi truck and turn the radio on and lay on the hood and watch movies. So I had no expectations of Nightmare on Elm Street being good because I didn't find this out till later. But something got weird in that when they printed the movie where it got washed out a little bit. Mm-hmm. So it looked, when I saw it on the TV, it looked cheap. It didn't look as crisp as these other movies. So I was excited to go see Alone in the Dark. And I just was like, oh, that Elm Street movie looks cheesy. You saw they had Freddy's hands going out, which kind of looked, that's it, fake, the only real fake thing in the movie. Yeah. So I just didn't think it was going to be good. So, I'm watching Alone in the Dark and, it's good and scary, and it's got all this stuff in it that you want in a horror film.
And Jack Palance.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it had some really good scenes in it, but then I almost forget about it because the Nightmare on Elm Street just blew me away. Yeah. I thought Tina was going to be the lead, and then they killed her off, and then all the fantasy sequences, and then Nancy just being such a badass, final girl, and Freddy being so scary, and he was cutting himself and cutting his. I was like, oh my God, this is the best movie I've ever seen.
Yeah, that's still as iconic as it is. The body bag in the school scene
Yeah.
gave me nightmares for so long. And I think I was like 6 or 7 when I finally saw, when I saw that movie for the first time. I don't know how I didn't get your age when you saw that.
We were 14. Yeah.
14. Yeah. So I was scarred from a young age.
You just wanted to bring up that you're younger than me, right? Thanks. Thanks.
No,
I see how this is going to go. All right.
I love the fact that you're playing along with us. We're going to have a good time.
Oh.
I do have some serious questions.
Yeah, even in your advanced age.
I do have some serious questions because I feel that we have a kinship, both of us being from the hills, raised there. But at the same time, and I'm sure you get this a lot. So I was listening to a lot of interviews. You tell the story about being 14, writing, correspondence, sending movie posters. And I want to get to how you basically fleeced Berea out of a summer internship to go to New York. I want to get to that in a second. Now, we have been doing our research on you, by the way, is what I'm trying to show. Right? So, but can you talk a little bit about your experience being biracial? And I'm sorry to bring this up, and I know it's a lot, like you're the only one, but also being a gay man in a place, and you're just a few years older than me, but it wasn't overly accepting when I was there, and I know it wasn't overly accepting when you were there.
Yeah, no, I don't mind talking about it at all. I mean, I preface this conversation by, saying that I have nothing but gratitude for where I grew up. I think it gave me a great perspective on the world that I wouldn't have anywhere else. And I learned that once you work through people's prejudices, there are good people underneath, is what I'll say. And I have
sometimes you have to dig deep with a shovel.
No, but I have a lot of people, a lot of relatives there that I love. But, my mom was white, and we moved back there to take care of her grandparents. And basically it was my sister and I, and then 2 other biracial kids that were in our whole school system from grade 0 through college, through Lee's College. So there were only 4 of us, and we both came in, both families came in around the same time. And yeah, I mean, the racism was horrible. Like, I'm not gonna lie. I mean, people and when I give examples that are horrific, it makes it seem like it happened all the time, and it didn't. And there were a lot of good people there, but mom would get death threats. People would call us the N-word. There were kids on the bus that would spit on us. It was very, one thing, like when I was a junior, I got selected for prom court, and all they have to do is, like, a girl has to walk into the room with me. I'm like, not her date. We just, they pair us up. And, like, literally the principal of the school was getting calls from girls' parents going, well, can he walk with one of his kind? And this was in 1986. And then I have a friend who was on prom court, Leslie Pope. I love her to this day. And again, love everybody that I grew up with. Because again, racism, and my mom always said, don't get angry with these people, like, they're ignorant. And she only meant ignorant in that they haven't.
No,
but she's like, they haven't seen anybody like you before. And that, and I've seen people change so much. Like, so many people that I went to school with are still friends of mine. And they're like, I've married somebody of a different race that I would never have done that if I had not known you, because you opened my mind. So I say all this with, like, gratitude for where it ended up. It was just, as a kid, it was hard to go through. Yeah. But my friend Leslie Pope was like, and she's like tall. She's like, I don't even know how tall. She's way taller than me. I'm 5'7". She's like, fuck them bitches, I'll walk with you. And I was like, cool, And then the year after that, I think Jason, who was the other man in town, became prom king, which was cool. So, it's an evolution that you see in people, and it's gotten a lot better. When I go back to that area, I'm actually surprised that, oh, wow, there's a couple of people of color around here of different races, and people aren't staring at me like they used to. So it's changed, but I don't think people realize that it wasn't that long ago. The late 80s wasn't that long ago. And there's a lot of towns like that. And as far as being gay, people knew. It was kind of like don't ask, don't tell. I kind of got lucky because nobody's parents would let them date me anyway. So I didn't have that pressure in high school of.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to laugh, but it's just.
No, but it's like, it's you make lemonade out of lemons, but so I never had that pressure of having to have a girlfriend, because girls, their parents just wouldn't let them date me. But my friends knew that I was gay and they were fine with it. And there were a couple other gay students at school. But it was kind of like, I told my best friends, but I didn't tell like everybody, but people kind of assumed anyway. And there was kind of a don't ask, don't tell kind of thing about it. Like most people didn't care. People really only started calling me faggot when calling me nigger went out of style. You know what I'm saying? Like once they couldn't call me that anymore, people started going, oh, that's not cool. Once people started doing that, then I started getting called, a fag. And it's not by everybody. This, again, it wasn't like, I don't want it to sound like all of Eastern Kentucky was like this. There were so many people that weren't like that, or so many people that would stand up for me, but it was the pervasive culture at that time, because they'd never had seen anybody who was biracial in their town. So they just had all these negative stereotypes from movies and hearing stories from Lexington. Like every time there was a black man that did something bad in Lexington, I would get like a knot in my stomach, because I knew the conversation, if it was a murder, especially, they'd be talking about it at school the next day, and they'd be talking, it's just a weird way to grow up, where you feel like you're the representative of all black people. And I got that a lot too. Well, you're not like those other black people, you're smart and you're well educated and you're nice and you don't steal. And, I got that, I got that a lot too.
Right. I know. And it's one of those questions that I couldn't, but I had to ask you a little bit about it, simply because we're from the same area. And, and to correct one little thing, and this is coming from me, it's willful ignorance.
I think at a certain
lot of it is willful ignorance. I don't want to know. I don't want to get better.
I think there comes a point, like I think when I first got there was a lot of ignorance because people had never seen anybody like me before. But I think there's a point now, obviously, where there's been exposure to people, and so now there is willful. I mean, I still have some people that I love dearly who still think that they're not sure if mixing the races is what God wants, and they'll tell me this without even realizing how offensive it is. And I just I don't say anything, because at this point it's like, why turn it into a fight at this point? Okay,
so I'm sorry, I had to get into it. I wanted to ask you some serious stuff. However, you went from Breathitt to, so you're at Lee's, which eventually became, I think.
No, I didn't go to Lee's. I went graduated Breathitt High School.
And then you went to Berea?
To Berea, yeah.
Okay. So you went to Berea, and I'm assuming, I was listening to one interview that you decided just to give up at Berea and go. But now, can you explain, like I said earlier, how did you fleece Berea out of the money to send you to New York?
I didn't fleece them. That's term, but they didn't have a summer program where you could, for anything to do with the arts. So I worked with Dr. Bolin, who was the head of the theater department at the time, and he's dean and great person. And Shan Ayers was another one of the teachers that I adored there. But I worked with him to create like a program where I'd go to New York and I had to see like 6 Broadway plays and write a report on them. So that was the reason for me to go. But I really wanted to go to the American Academy of Dramatic Arts, but they didn't have any umbrella to give me any payments for that. So it's like, if I did a thing on theater and saw plays, then I could go to the American Academy of Dramatic Arts. So it was more like creative accounting with Berea, or creative.
I just like using the word fleece.
I know.
Yeah, Broadway plays are expensive.
Yeah, but no, it just reminds me when we were in New York. This is horrible. When I first moved there, I just got in with I went to this gay and lesbian youth group, and that's just where I found my friends when I first moved there. Right. And sometimes they were all just had moved there to New York too, so we were all kind of poor. And sometimes they would go to restaurants and one would yell fleece, and then everybody would run off. I'm like, what are you doing? And they're like, we don't pay for the meals. And I was like, don't ever do that again. So
I didn't know I was going to do a trigger. Sorry.
You triggered me. Me.
I got to talk about, because, you're from Kentucky. You actually went to New York. You ended up going to film school in New York. I'm from Kentucky. I almost went to film school in New York. Bunch of stuff happened we won't get into. But when I went up there for my visit, to see the program and to talk to the instructors and get a general idea of if this is what I wanted to go. This is how they pitched me coming to New York, which, by the way, I was dead set on going to New York. It's where I've always wanted to go.
Yeah.
They didn't have to pitch hard. The person who was giving me the tour first broke me off with a very attractive woman who pointed out, "Oh, you don't have an accent at all."
Oh my God.
You'll fit in right in here.
I don't remember you ever telling me that story.
I may not have, but then after she was done giving me the tour of the campus and the facilities, the guy came back and he goes, "So are you single?" It's like, "Yeah." "Oh, you'll have New York is where you come to meet all kinds of women." Like, that's your pitch? Talk to me about the university. I didn't know if you had that same experience of, "Oh yeah, come to New York, you'll get all kinds."
No, I didn't. It's so funny because people ask me if I got culture shock or anything like that, but I've known from a young age that I wanted to work in entertainment. So
yeah,
when I got to New York, I was completely fine. Like, I didn't have culture shock or anything. I'm like, well, let me find some gays, to hang out with, because that gotta, and then, yeah, I was going to the American Academy of Dramatic Arts. I got an internship at New Line. So I was like, this is awesome. Like, it was like, I felt like I was in Fame.
yeah.
At the beginning of Fame, but then by the years later, I started feeling like I was Coco from Fame, where I'm like looking at the camera and crying as I take my top off for the lecherous producer. That never actually happened to me, but I'm just saying, for my soul, that's what it, after the business like beats you down for a long time.
So I think I wasn't culture shocked either, because I was just in love with New York.
Yeah.
But I will say the one thing that the one shock I did see in New York was I was walking down. It wasn't Broadway. It was like a road adjacent to Broadway, and there was this elderly African American postal lady, and she was like dead set on getting to her, her deliveries, and she elbow checked this very big lady of Spanish descent. I mean, she elbow checked her right in the chest to get by her, and that lady turned around and looked at the elderly African American lady, and she just went off on her. And you know what happened? Nothing. She just kept walking.
Yeah.
I was like, I love this town.
Yeah, LA was there's just so much energy. I loved it I loved it especially when I was younger. Like, I found when I've gone back there, I've always gone in the summer when it's really hot. So the minute I get off the plane, I'm drenched in sweat. I'm like,
yeah.
I'm like, oh, I feel like I'm like, oh, it's crowded, too many people.
Yeah. Well,
but it is a great city.
So back to and I'm a little fuzzy when I was trying to, and I know you talk about this a lot. So you were in school.
You're like, I know you talk about this so much, Jeff, but
I know. Well, I'm a little fuzzy about the detail of actually getting the internship at New Line. So were you in school?
Oh,
the acting thing wasn't working out, or were you interning while you were in school?
I was interning while I was in school.
Okay, thank you.
So yeah,
that's what I was a little
like
fuzzy
a summer. Yeah, it was going to be like a summer internship.
Yeah.
Summer staying at the American Academy. When I was at the American Academy, I had the fortune of meeting this really wonderful girl named Nicole, and her mom was a casting agent at the time. I didn't know it, and I think I was pretty much the only person in the class that didn't know it. So that's why we ended up becoming friends, because she was just pretty. Gay guys love pretty women for some reason. I don't know what it is.
We have that in common, Jeff. Sorry.
Growing up, it was like, what, Linda Carter's, oh, she's so beautiful. We just want to put them in a box. Not in a box. That sounds really creepy.
Really good movie. Keep writing it.
I want to put them on a shelf because they're so pretty. But she was really sweet. So she ended up getting me some extra work on all my children. And I just started getting a lot of extra work while I was working at New Line. And I was like, oh, screw this is easy. I'm just going to stay in New York. Cut to like a year and a half later, I'm like, I'm going back to Berea, finish college.
Yeah,
because it was tough being an actor. Back again, it's a sign of the times, but this was the early 90s, and my agent literally told me that I was an ethnic Michael J. Fox type. And I'm like, that's awesome. Everybody loves Michael J. Fox. He's on Family Ties. He's on back. She's like, no, they don't write parts for people like that. She's like, if you rapped or played basketball, I could cast you, but you just, because I'm like light skinned and I'm, couldn't play a thug back in the 90s. that was the only work that was available. So, she pretty much is like, I can get you a lot of extra work, but I just don't know what to.
Wow.
maybe
See,
can
I
get you-
saw that quote and I was wondering if that was true. So that
Oh,
actually
yeah.
did happen.
Yeah. Yeah. She wasn't being mean about it. She was just being very matter of fact. She's like, maybe I can get you a guest spot on the Cosby Show. And I was like, back in the day, I was like, okay, but now I'm like, I wouldn't want that on my resume.
So did
Well,
that
there's a
kind
lot of people who
inspire-
did do the Cosby Show.
Yeah.
I'd have liked it, but
So did that kind of inspire you to like maybe lean more towards writing?
yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. Because then I was like, well, screw it, I'll just write stuff for myself. I'm like 19, 20. I'm like, I can play one of these, pretty high school, college people that gets murdered. But then I didn't make a movie that got made until I was 30. So unless it was going to be on the WB, I couldn't play a teenager anymore.
That's a funny joke.
Homeboys in
But-
Outer Space. Yeah, an forgotten classic.
But 30, that's pretty young. You're still doing fairly well that you have Final Destination in theaters by 30.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely thought so. Like, I mean, I still, it's
You kicked ass. And
Yeah,
you,
it was-
and you were very lucky because we're talking about a #1 film.
yeah. No, it was honestly, it was a great blessing how that all came together and got made, and it was kind of a sleeper hit. It came out, and horror movies usually open really well and then they drop off like 50%. And our movie opened at like #3, but then during the week it was creeping up. Then the next weekend it got higher, and then they realized, oh wow, we've got a hit on our hands here. So it was a true word of mouth hit. One of the few word of mouth hits that had been out at the studios, for a horror film.
Right. And you're 30. And I'm curious. So you went back to Berea, finished your degree, and then went back
No,
to
I went.
Newline?
Now that's a well, I'll tell the quick version. I had been telling Bree I was going to come back for so many times that I was like, well, just this time so they know I'm serious, I'll come back for the summer before the semester starts, so they'll know that I'm serious. So I came back early, stayed the summer, started the first semester, finished the first semester, then I got a notice that I was on convocation probation. And they have convocations like where you'd go to like this auditorium
Yep.
and listen to a speaker. You had to go to 10 of them a semester. And I didn't realize that I was behind on convocations when I left, because it'd been like a year and a half, 2 years. And my advisor didn't tell me. And so I was in every play that semester, and most of the convocations were at night. And I just didn't know. So they were like, well, we have to suspend you for a semester. I'm like, well, if you do that, then I'm going to have to spend another summer out of school
Mm-hmm.
and then come back. It's going to be a whole other year before I can come back. And I don't think anybody thought they were really going to do it, but they did it. And I tried to appeal it, and they were like, well, we're making an example of convocations this year. So I got put on convocation probation. So then I was like, I guess this is my sign to go back to New York.
And then you went back to Newline.
Yeah.
So this is where I'm curious. First of all, have those bastards Berea given you an honorary degree yet?
It's funny. No. And it's funny.
Because Chad and I work in higher ed, and we see this shit all the time.
No,
By the way, my title is Director of Academic Advising, so that's how I know Bob.
That's so funny. No, it's when I spoke to the Berea College girls basketball team, I just jokingly said I hope that you'd think they would give me an honorary degree at some point. And he said that they were actually taking submissions for that. Like, so it just serendipitously happened. I don't know what the outcome is, but
Dude, you are a legitimate Hollywood screenwriter from Berea, from Jackson, Kentucky. They should go ahead and give you the honorary degree. They gave Carpenter one in Bowling Green at Western.
Well,
I'm just saying.
All right, I'm going to reach out to Berea now.
Oh, it's all right. I'll let it go. The second
No,
question,
I won't now for the rest of the conversation.
I bet they asked for money. But anyway, that being said, I want to know, you worked in the business side for many, many years at Newline, right?
Yeah, I worked. Yeah.
That seems to me that would give you a leg up when it came to circumnavigating screenwriting and getting your script out there and getting it sold.
It didn't help. What it did was give me a great like look into how they make the movies behind the scenes. So I was very much able to like learn to separate any rejection I got for and take it super personally, because I realized behind the scenes, sometimes I would pass on a script for the silliest reason. Like, they'd get a really amazing script in, but there weren't any attachments. And then, Jim Carrey would come in with a bad script. They're like, well, let's do Jim Carrey's script. We just did this last couple of, so I just realized that a lot of the decisions aren't based on the creative. So that really helped me learn that stuff a lot. But when I worked at New Line, I had written a lot of scripts that I'd submitted to them before, and I always got access to the coverage. Like, they would have somebody read the script and give notes on it. And some of the scripts got good coverage and some got bad coverage. But I noticed, like, even my good coverage scripts never went to the next level. So I knew that there was because I'd been there for so long, and everybody knew the Bob Shea story about how we connected when I was 14. So, everybody loved me, but they always thought of me as the Bob Shea guy, And so when I wrote Final Destination, one of my friends, Chris Bender, worked for two producers, Craig Perry and Warren Zide, who had a first look deal at New Line, and they happened to be looking for horror stuff. And I'm like, you know what, let me attach producers to this and then bring it to New Line, because then they'll have to take it more seriously. So I learned that from working in this business for sure.
Yeah.
But it didn't magically open doors, but it certainly gave me a lot of insight into the business, and they would always read my stuff. It's just, you had to overcome that idea, because honestly, you find out everybody that ends up working in a studio is either a writer or want to be writer, want to be director, not want to be, they're doing it. They want to be successful. They're all working there because they want to be the next person that has a project take off. So, you have to really strategize to kind of make your stuff stand out.
Yeah. So how did that help you as you became more and more successful? So did it help you with, say, once you've sold your pitch, and then Bob Shea basically, and for those people who don't know, do you want to explain who Robert Shea was?
So
we
Bob
may have
Shea,
some listeners who aren't. I know he was in New Line. I know he was on New Line.
Yeah.
By the way, you wouldn't have Lord of the Rings without Bob Shea, but keep going.
Yes. Yeah, Bob Shea's created New Line Cinema. It started off as I love this story. It started off, he was just, him and his wife were in their apartment. They would just organize these like screenings of like cult films, like John Waters films, to go around college campuses. And he just built up a small distribution company, and he ended up financing the first Nightmare on Elm Street movie, which became a huge success. And he created New Line Cinema. So, especially when I worked there, like in the 90s, early 90s through the 90s, it was I think it was probably the best studio in Hollywood, because it was run by creative people. They took creative chances on stuff. I mean, they made Blade, and people were like, who wants to see a black vampire slayer? Like, they made Blade. This is the first Marvel black superhero movie. Thank you. They made The Mask, Dumb and Dumber, House Party, Lord of the Rings. I mean, they were the first studio to ever like put that much money into like doing a trilogy of films back to back. Like, everybody's like, this is either going to be brilliant or you're going to just, you're going to ruin the company. And it was brilliant. Like, Bob Shea, we were talking about him, and I forgot what you started your question.
No, I just wanted to explain who Bob Shea was. No, I like the fact. I like the fact that after all these years, because the business can jade you and the business can harden you. And I like the fact that your eyes lit up talking about Bob Shea. So you must still, after all this time, have a special place in your heart for him.
Yeah, no, I again, when I talk about Nightmare on Elm Street, when I talk about Bob Shea or Joy Mann, who was his assistant, she's no longer with us, unfortunately, but they really, from the age of 14, took me under their wings. And if they hadn't, I still would have I would have still found a way to work in the business. If I hadn't had that internship, I just know I would have, but it would not have been, it would not be the like amazing experience that I had, for sure. Like, I loved working at New Line. I got to, work at the house that Freddy Krueger built, which is my favorite film of all time. It's just it was just a great time. So.
And you got to hang out with all those, I'm hoping that you got to meet all those filmmakers as they came in and out of that building.
You know what? Some of them I lived in the New York office, which was more the corporate office. I wasn't out in the Los Angeles office, which was all the, stars and stuff. But we would get stars obviously coming in for meetings and things like that, and directors. And I would get to meet them, but I would also be very professional, so I didn't, I
know
was
when
very
not
good
to get starstruck.
yeah. So I would never get starstruck, and I would never, I might talk to somebody like at a premiere, but I tried my best to like keep everything professional. Like,
I find it fascinating that you told a story to an interviewer. You did 2 hours with a screenwriting podcast or a screenwriting interview a couple years ago.
Mhm.
And I don't know if you remember this, you actually told the story about having, was it lunch with the star of V? And
oh
that's
my
where you
God,
got,
yes.
I couldn't remember
Starstruck.
her name off the top of my head. I'm
Jane
so sorry.
Badler, you son of a bitch. How dare you not know her name? I adore her. She's a friend of mine. Like when growing up, like Nightmare on Elm Street was like my movie thing, and V was my TV sci-fi thing. Like I love that series. Me and my friend Greg Sloas used to go around school like doing dialogue. We always fight over who's going to be Diana, played by Jane Badler, but I would always get to be Diana, and he'd be Lydia.
Yeah.
And I was doing a short, and I reached out to her on Facebook.
That's okay. It works for us.
Yeah, and asked her if she would be, told her how much she meant to me, and asked her if she'd be in my short. She said, I'd love to, but I'm in Australia. So if I don't know if you have somebody here that can film me, or I was like, I'll make it work. I'll make it work. So she was so amazing to work, even though I didn't get to work with her in person. And so she's like, when I come to California, I have to take you out to lunch. So I'm like, cool, I'm going to go meet Jane Badler for lunch. And I've never been starstruck in my life. Like when I worked at New Line, I met like Morgan Freeman, who's like freaking amazing. I met like Brad Pitt. I've met Cameron Diaz. I mean, I met a lot of stars at like premieres and stuff like that. And I would chat with them. And it's just like, okay, they're people, you know? And, I met Heather Langenkamp, who I adore as Nancy in Nightmare on Elm Street. But I think maybe it was the way we met, but I guess maybe it was, I don't know if it was because we were meeting at the Chateau, this fancy like LA, place for lunch.
Yeah.
But I got there and she came out and she looked stunning, and she sat down and she's like, oh, how she's talking. And I'm sitting there going, I can't talk, like I was like, and so finally I had to take a breath, and I'm like, this is really embarrassing, but I now know what being starstruck is like, because I've never been starstruck in my life. I just need to take a moment and just soak this in, that I'm sitting with you. And then she just took my hand and she squeezed it, and she's like, you're so sweet. And she's just a lovely, lovely person.
I just love the fact that it was someone like that, because that I connect with that. We do a lot of convention work. I do a lot of panels, moderating for a lot of panels, and people ask me, and I go, stars are like anyone else. 90% of them are just fine, and 10% a-holes, right? Assholes.
Yeah, I'm in that
like
10%
normal people, right? I'm
Mhm.
sure you find the same thing working day in, day out. But I've only ever been starstruck 2 or 3 times as well, and it's someone that no one else would know. So I completely understand.
I think it's a person that really is important to you, and at a time in your life that that just holds so much, like emotional, like
And
good
when you're
memories.
young, it has to be when you're young. It's not going to be when you're 20 or 30 or 40. It has to be when you're really, really young. You're right. They were there for the development of you. Sorry, Chad, I cut you off. I thought you were about
No. I was just I'm reminiscing in my own head about William Forsythe. That was me. That was him. That was mine.
Yeah,
So,
he's amazing.
Could not put together a sentence.
So Bob pushes you out the door.
Well, he pushes me out. It's so funny because I stayed at New Line after the first movie came out. Then I sold my story. I wrote the story for the second movie and sold that. And then finally, they told me at New Line, Jeffrey, we love you, but you've sold 2 now, so go out and boy writer. So I had a late start in the business, because normally when I sold the treatment and wrote the first draft of the script in 1997. So normally in Hollywood, the minute you sell a script like that and it goes out, if I'd been in Hollywood, I'd been go out taking meetings, that you'd be working in town. So I didn't get out to Hollywood until 2001 after 9/11. So by the time I came out here, they're like, who the fuck are you?
Even with all your connections, right?
Well, most of my connections were through New Line. So a lot of the people that I grew up with at New Line were branching out and starting at other places. So I got to meet people through that, but it's a really big town, and there's a lot of rotation and turnaround of people, like,
Right.
there are so many people that just come and go every day in this business. And even the ones that stick around, like there'll be cycles where you don't hear about them for years and years, and we've all been there. So yeah, like nobody until you say Final Destination, then they're like, oh, wow, okay.
So that's a double-edged sword. I'm assuming you get sick of Final Destination questions, and by the way, I don't have any. But at the same time, it's your calling card, right?
Yeah, I get sick of it. I'm honestly like, I'm in just as a horror fan. Like I'm honestly so grateful that movie did so well, because it was a chance for New Line. Like they were like, we don't know about doing a movie with death as the killer. Like you can't see it. That doesn't make any sense. Like it was a struggle to get it off the ground. So the fact that it's had such a cultural impact is such a blessing to me. Like I never get sick of it. Now I'm sure if I had like written 20 other movies that were successful as Final Destination, maybe I'd be sick of it. But I'm like, that makes me happy, like send me those log truck memes, I don't care. Like,
yeah, because in some ways Final Destination, for probably more than you realize, that was their Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah,
for them.
Yeah,
I mean,
and I've started seeing a lot more of that, and it means a lot. It means a lot to me. So I actually don't get sick about it. I don't want to, like, we don't, obviously people can hear me talk about it all over the place. So, but I actually am just, it just makes me smile whenever, sometimes I'll hear people, I'll be out and they're like, oh man, that was a Final Destination moment. And I'm like,
you've worked your way into the lexicon. I mean,
I know.
That is fantastic. You are pop culture.
This is right here, pop culture.
You are, though. You are pop culture. I just letting you know, if you didn't already know.
And pop culture really likes volleyball.
Woo! Yeah, so no, I've got a I'm I've certainly been chasing that friggin' dragon for 20 years, like I need another Final Destination hit, Jesus.
And at least you got the one. Most never get the zero. I got to ask a question though. You wrote some other screenplays and some of it wasn't produced. What in the hell was your take on Pumpkinhead, and can you talk about it?
Yeah, no, I can absolutely talk about it. I mean, I wish I had the script. That's annoys me so much, because I wrote it back in the time when I worked on it at New Line, and I just I didn't keep a copy of it. But no, it was a direct sequel to the original Pumpkinhead, and it picked up with Bud, who's a kid that showed Ed Harley where the Pumpkinhead, or the pumpkin, where the haggis was, and it picked up with him in college. So it took place, I think it was like 10 years after the original. So he was in high school. Him and his friends every summer they'd go home to one of their hometowns, but Bud never wanted anybody to come back to his town because he was kind of embarrassed because he came from such a poor place. But his friends kind of surprise him and go back to visit him. They end up accidentally getting in a car accident, and somebody calls Pumpkinhead on them. And Sarah, who played Bud's younger sister, was getting groomed to be like the next Haggis, because Haggis was getting old. So I love the script. Like I was so happy with it. And they were like, we're going to go in a different direction. So then they went with Blood Wings, which is not connected to Pumpkinhead at all. So,
no, but that's one of those things, because so we try to have a good time, but we also concentrate on a lot of questions about the industry, because we're fascinated by the industry.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jeff.
No, you go first.
It just drives you crazy. How many of those do you just get away and go, damn, mine would have been 10 times better? It has to happen to you all the time.
I mean, it does. And sometimes I'm really surprised. I'm like, oh, I see why they went with that writer. Sometimes I leave a meeting and then I go, oh, they stole those ideas from me. That's why they were meeting with me. But Pumpkinhead, because that was my first paying job in the business. Right. And I love that property. And I was actually, because the producer had me write a script and had somebody else write a script that wasn't a direct sequel. That was just kind of the movie that came out. Mm-hmm. And they just decided to go with the other one. And I don't know why. I definitely think my story would have been better, because the Pumpkinhead sequel that came out just wasn't a Pumpkinhead movie. It didn't have Haggis in it, had none of the characters from the original. This looked like some woman had sex with the Pumpkinhead demon or something. I don't even know what the movie was. So yeah, I kind of wish that one had gotten made, but you can't really. The thing is, I've learned to not hang on to that stuff because that's how you get burned out and bitter in this business. And I've learned to like let things, and I think part of that's growing up where I did too, you know, like survival. It's just like, you just let things kind of roll off your back. My sister's the opposite. My sister's like, went to the military. She would friggin' somebody call us anything, she'd like start fist fighting with them. And I'd be the one telling jokes and trying to like, you know, be like the clown so people wouldn't pick on me. So
I know
yeah,
the feeling.
Yeah, so I think it's picked me. I think it's helped me survive this industry and stay, you know, not get bitter and jaded.
Yeah.
Well, so this is going to be it's probably going to be a repeat answer, but I am kind of curious. So those are scripts that you didn't get picked, but what about the ones, because, you know, one thing we hear about you know, I love listening to podcasts and interviews with screenwriters who talk about, you know, submitting their scripts and how sometimes they are so drastically altered. And,
Oh, yeah.
you know, from you, I know like a lot of the ones, the characters get changed either by race or sexuality. And I'm kind of curious, when you see that the finished product, are you aware of the changes that are happening until the product is made? And then how do you process that
Yeah,
you know,
I mean, for me, just working at the studio again, I've seen the development process and I know how it goes. So I expect that unless I'm going to be financing or directing my own script, I'm not going to have a lot of say in it. So I've been fortunate to stay in the good graces of like 99.9% of the directors that I've worked with. So, you know, they've kept me involved in rewriting stuff sometimes, but sometimes they haven't. And my thing is, I don't care, because people get really protective and precious about stuff. And for me, if somebody gives me a good idea or if somebody comes up with a great idea for my script, I don't care. Like that, if it makes the movie better, I'm all for it. But it's when it gets dumbed down, or when it's like, oh, we can't afford this, so let's take all this stuff out, or, you know, a lot of with the diversity casting, like that's just not, you know, in people's head. That, you know, until recently, that hasn't really been in people's heads. Like when you send a script in, I can write like an African-American character and a Latino character or an Asian, or, you know, and just the default for all these characters are white actors. Like that's what casting agents send in. So even when we've sent out casting notices saying open to all ethnicities, which is like, send us all ethnicities, they'll send in like 99% white people. So now it's kind of started to change a little bit in the industry, but, you know, those kind of changes don't bother me as long as it's making the script better. But a lot of the times the changes don't. But again, I know, like if I have a movie that I've written that's going to be $3 to $5 to $7 million budget, and we end up getting it with a production company that's only got $500,000, you know, I know I'm going to have to go through and change stuff. So I think, again, that's another blessing of having worked at New Line for so long is again, I saw how they made the sausage. You know, of course I want to come out with some really great sausage. I'm trying to keep this from going into like
I love it when you talk about sausage. Keep
But, you know, of course I want to come out with some really good sausage that's different than all the other sausages, but, you know, I still want it to be enjoyed. I want people to enjoy my sausage, you know?
So I heard that. I subscribed to your website.
I'm kind of going to jump the gun a little bit because we're not going chronologically.
You're not going to jump the sausage, are you?
No, but I know nothing's been released yet, but I've seen that you've talked about the fact that you're writing for the animated show on Netflix, the Usagi Yojimbo animated show. Yeah. Which, by the way, yay.
I know, it's exciting. And I have to always clarify, it's a spinoff, so it's not like a straight adaptation, but we have Stan's approval on everything. He's, you know, given the okay on everything. So we're definitely, it's definitely faithful. But it's a spinoff and it's free. It's a little younger skewing.
Yeah.
But it's been so much fun to write. I'm actually writing, I got an episode that I have to turn in
but
like next week. So I'm a little behind.
But when you're writing for animation, and specifically, is there more of a, like, the sky's the limit to your imagination? There's no blocks. There's, you know, you can do whatever you want with animation. Is that?
There is, within a budget.
Yeah.
So the sky is the limit, but you also have to realize, like, they have to create all the assets, you know, so every character, every location, every prop is an asset. And you've only got a certain number of assets budgeted for your show. So then you have to break that down per episodes. And so this, you kind of set your pie in the sky stuff early. And then you're like, okay, well, for this scene, we can repurpose these characters and just put them in different clothes. That's all animation. So, so you have freedom of imagination, but you still have to work within, it's like if you write 100 ninjas, 100 samurai rabbit ninjas, leap over the hill. It's like, we can do 10. It's like, okay.
Okay. I was kind of curious about, if there was that limitation, but it appears that there still is. So that's interesting. I think
probably, and again, since ours is a series as well, like you have to keep in mind, like you want to keep, you're going to be using a lot of the same characters, but they have different costumes. For a feature, you probably have a much bigger playground, because the films are much bigger. But with the episodes, it's like you're spreading them out, 10 episode seasons.
So I talked to Todd about this, and I was talking about the difference between screenwriting and writing prose, like a novel. And Todd Farmer's, he just loves screenwriting. It just kind of got to the meat and potatoes, if you will, of, here's the dialogue, here's the action, this is what. Yeah. So I ask you, novels in you?
I co-wrote a novel for my movie Tamra with a friend of mine, John Doyle, who's a great writer. When I was young, I used to write poems and short stories. Yeah. But as I've gotten older, this is the bad thing about, just so much stimulation coming in society. It's like, I like the like Todd said, the meat and potatoes of screenwriting. Like,
and I don't remember if that was exactly what Todd said.
But that sounds like something Todd would say. Todd also likes to show his ass off in movies. I never stopped giving him a hard time for that.
We talked about it. Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh no, you watched his stuff. So how many times did you see his ass?
Well, I asked him why he kept killing himself.
Oh,
because he's writing this shit. Right. He's in it, and that character gets killed. So
that's fun. That's the fun
I know
stuff.
it's fun. I know it's fun, but is there a certain psychological thing that's ticking underneath that's doing it? Is there something in it? Anyway, we got really into it, and we ended up having a really good time with Todd. He's gonna hopefully start doing some movies in Ireland, and we got invited to come over. And I told him, I said, you shouldn't say it. I will go.
Oh yeah, Jeffrey, no pressure there.
Well, that does sound like mommy and daddy are divorced, and mommy bought me a huge.
I shot Day of the Dead in Bulgaria, so I don't know if that's as exciting as Ireland.
Oh man, how hard is it to write a remake that people are kind of quasi calling a sequel that's already to a remake? Where do you start to break down the logic and of just and your, by the way, one of the best panels I ever did, and one of the few times I got starstruck and I just had to, bury it deep, and just do it. That's kind of probably the definition of being a professional.
That was me. Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. Who?
No, I am having a good time. It was George Romero.
Oh, yeah.
I'm assuming you're a huge Romero fan as well.
Yeah, I have a funny Romero story because I was so nervous after writing Day of the Dead, and I'm friends with Ken Forey, who I love. He's just such a great
fantastic storyteller.
Oh my God, I love him so much. Not like that, but
No, he is just a great storyteller.
He's so great.
We got to have a conversation with him right after Obama got elected for the first time. And him going, he talked 45 minutes about, just that. And I was just enthralled with his entire conversation.
Yeah.
He's an amazing, brilliant guy. And, we saw each other at a lot of conventions. He said, hey, Jeffrey, George is over there. Have you ever gone to talk? I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm too nervous to talk to him because I'm afraid he's going to get mad at me for doing a remake of Day of the Dead. He's like, what? And he literally grabbed me, dragged me over to George Romero across the convention floor. He's like, hey, George, this is Jeff Reddick. He's a great guy, great writer. George's like, hi, nice to meet you. He goes, yeah, he wrote the Day of the Dead remake. And he's like nervous to meet you because he thinks you're going to hate him. And George just looked at me. He goes, no, he goes, I know this business. He goes, I wish you every success, young man. And I was like, oh my God, you're so late. Because I'm a huge fan of George Romero. But it was one of those situations where I was just too nervous. I was like, I can't meet him.
I can't imagine. And literally, can you talk about that for a minute? Because you're a fan of the man.
Yeah.
They do a Dawn of the Dead remake, which but it isn't a Dawn of the Dead. They could have called it something else, and it would probably have been. And this is just my opinion. It's a good movie. I don't even know that it needs to be called Dawn of the Dead.
Yeah.
It takes place in a mall, and there's zombies, but that's about where it ends, right?
Yeah.
And then you have, and then you're kind of doing. It's not a sequel, but it's a Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, the funny thing is
that.
Yeah. And the thing is,
a little bit about the story. Sorry, I'm rambling.
No, I ramble too. I rambled as well. No,
I'm a rambling man.
Huh?
Shut up, Chad. He's a rambling man and a gambling man. Sorry.
Oh, no, they had already hired Steve Miner to direct the movie, so I knew they were going to make it.
Yeah.
So my thinking was, all right, I'm a fan. I can at least write a faithful adaptation of the movie. I know some fans are going to hate it because, I'm not stupid. Some people are going to, but at least, they're going to make it. It should be me. So I wrote a pitch that was very close to the original, just updated, modern. Yeah. And and this is the first time this has happened to me, really, because I was told like this, we'll hire you to write this one. But then once we got in the development process, and they were planning to shoot already, so we were kind of under the gun, but they started making me change everything that was related to the original movie.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll even see in the movie, there's some setups where I set up something that's going to pay off like in the original, and things don't pay off. Like when Salazar finds a machete, there's just all kinds of stuff that was like remnants of the original. So when I first, I've told this a lot, but when I first started talking about the movie, I was like, yeah, I know that there are like people out there that hate remakes, but I think fans are going to be really happy. Then by the time I got through writing it, I was like, it's a movie. And they ended up casting Ving Rhames to trick people. Like Ving Rhames was, Ving Rhames was never Captain Rhodes. Like Captain Rhodes was like a separate character, and they just cast Ving Rhames to connect it, to Dawn of the Dead. And, I watched the movie, and if it wasn't called Dawn of the Dead or Day of the Dead, if it was just called Zombie Town, well, there's already a Zombie Town, but
probably, yeah.
But if they'd have called it something else, I think it would have done fine, because I think it's a fun movie. But they called it Day of the Dead. So of course I'm living through that whole process, and I'm watching it happen. And, I'm like, why is that zombie climbing up the ceiling, Steve? Because in the next scene, the zombie can't reach him in the air vent. He's like, oh, and I love Steve Miner. He's a great director, and he's a super cool guy. But I remember we got into such a big argument about that spider zombie, as they called it in the reviews. Cause I'm like, he's like, I just like it because we've never seen it. I'm like, yeah, because it doesn't make any sense. He's like, well, he's sticking his fingers in the stucco on the ceiling. But I'm like, Steve, the very next scene, they're in the air vent and the zombies can't get to him. Well, if it doesn't work, I'll take it out. I'm like, it's not working. I'll take it out if it doesn't work. It's in there. So there was a lot of stuff like that where it's just like, oh man, this is gonna. But I have to say, like, that Steve was wonderful, and the cast was like so amazing, and like everybody was so down to earth. I didn't get to meet Ving Rhames. They shot him out before I got to Bulgaria. So that was the only bummer. I got to meet all the cast. And I was like, "Where's Ving Rhames?" They're like, "He left a couple of days ago." I'm like, "Oh."
Well, how do you handle that? So if there's maybe a movie that you're passionate about writing, it goes through the process, like you say, and it's not necessarily anybody's fault. It's just Steve Miner thought a scene was cool, and it doesn't logically. And that's a whole other issue of Steve Miner's directing a bunch of films, and some of them are pretty good, and why he didn't kind of connect those two dots is a whole other conversation for Steve Miner.
Betty White feeds cows to an alligator. Come on.
Yeah, that's true. He directed Lake Placid.
Lake Placid, yeah.
The best, Betty White's best performance. This is where if I had a dick, I'd tell you to suck it. Sorry. That's one of my favorite lines. Betty White says it in Lake Placid.
Oh, I thought you were saying it for a minute there, and I was like,
no.
I was like, wow,
Betty
Joe,
White
way to go off the rails.
Cops. Sorry. Now I'm rambling. We're just having a conversation.
We're never making it to Bulgaria now.
No, we've totally been told.
No, that would have been fine. I was just like, oh, I better be careful what I say now.
No. But you've got this movie, you've written it, and you're like, well, it's a movie. How do you go out and sell it? Because you can't say anything bad.
You can creatively say stuff. I think you can tell, like, I'm pretty honest. I think I've gotten a very good gauge of where movies started that I write and where they end up. So I never go out and tell anybody like, this is going to be, I mean, I tell them, I'm like, look, if you're expecting a remake of Day of the Dead, you're going to hate it.
Yep.
Like, if you just go in and, wanting to see a fun zombie movie with some people that in it, there's some good bloody effects and some good action scenes, you'll really like it. But if the day that, I'm just honest with people. Like I don't try to like trick them into going to see a movie. I mean, I certainly won't talk, I'll give credit to a lot of people, like, for all the hard work they're doing, because it takes a ton of work and a lot of hard work to make a movie. It's not easy to make a movie at all. So getting a movie made is a huge accomplishment. But I kind of always have a good feeling about where my stuff kind of is landing with people. Like the movie I just directed, Don't Look Back, that just came out. Like I knew going into it that it wasn't a horror movie in the traditional sense, that it was more of like a mystery with horror in it. So I knew that was going to be a tough sell, because I knew people were going to be expecting for me. They were going to be expecting big bloody set pieces, and I nailed it. Like a lot of, the reviews, it's funny, like now it's like 50-50 on Rotten Tomatoes, where like half the reviews are like awful, but they're all the ones that don't like it say it's not like Final Destination. And the other reviews are great, because they're like, oh, this isn't like, like Final Destination, this is something totally different, and we really appreciate it. So you just kind of learn to let that stuff roll.
One of the things we were excited about is you're actually our first guest who, for some odd reason, actually has a movie to sell that's out right now, And I'm curious, this is your you directed The Good Samaritan, which was a short film, but this is your feature length directing debut, correct?
Yeah.
And it's coming out when? Now.
It's out.
No, I know, but what's going on right now? How do you...
COVID and the election. COVID in the election, you mean?
Yeah.
That was not a this was not a great time for a movie to come out.
Well, I mean,
or so the election, I think the election actually has been more distracting than COVID. I mean, COVID is horrible, and so there's a lot of people suffering from it, and we're all, hopefully that will go away at some point. But
I think you're right. But I mean, if you're home, VOD is doing very well, right? So digital streaming is doing very well right now. The industry is still working. We're still making content. People are home. They are consuming. But the election does take people's minds off of it, because this is going to be a couple of weeks before this comes out, but we still don't know who we're talking. And we were talking before this, and you and I were emailing last night. Here's an Eastern Kentucky phrase: nervous as long-tailed cats in room full of rocking chairs.
But I'm not nervous now. I was nervous last night.
I'm still nervous.
I might be eating a crow by the time this comes out, but I have a feeling Trump's going to be out of office. I'm feeling pretty fucking good about it.
I'm glad you are, because I'm as nervous as a dog shitting peach seeds. I'm trying to think of all the ones that would hear. Yeah, don't ask Chad. It's just nervous because it would be painful. But you have all this shit going on, so you finally get your directorial debut. I'm just kind of curious, and how does it? You still have to go on and sell it. Like the world is, we're in the middle of a pandemic.
Yeah,
we have this petulant pumpkin in the White House, and we're trying to remove him. And we are doing our best in our little blue berry in this big ass red state, trying to do our best, but clearly we fail. How do you go out and just kind of? That makes sense.
I mean, it's hard. I mean, it was hard to get, because of COVID, all the productions had kind of stopped. A lot of films that were done, they decided to put out on VOD instead of going out theatrically. So like a lot of the market was flooded with a lot of product. So it was actually hard, because at first you're like, everybody's desperate for content, but it's like, but there's still all these like super A-listers that have projects that they're putting out on VOD.
So what we had Mulan, I'm just thinking of The Witches, Chad, Robert Zemeckis' last film on HBO Max. I mean, then that's just the last couple I can think of. Yeah.
So it was tough to get a distribution, because people didn't know what the market was going to be like. And then finally we picked a time we were going to release it around Halloween. And it's good because theatrically there wasn't a lot of competition, because a lot of the big horror movies have moved on, but they've dumped a lot of horror stuff, and people get nostalgic during Halloween too. It's like, oh, I want to watch Halloween on Halloween, or this is my favorite Halloween movie, so let's get together and watch my favorite Halloween movie. And then it went right into like elections craziness. So
Hocus Pocus is #1 at the box office.
I know.
Which was never #1 at the box office.
I
We had
know.
Nick Garris on it last month, and we're talking about it. Hocus Pocus wasn't even #1 when it came out.
I know.
Disney dumped it in the summer. People don't remember that.
Disney just screws everybody over.
I know.
But I do got to ask with Don't Look Back, your directorial debut, how is that feeling of you wrote it, you direct it, you have full control. You don't have to worry about anybody else's messing with the script or changing it. How does that feel?
Well, it felt good before we started shooting. But then once you start shooting, once you go into production on something, you realize, especially if you're shooting something for like an indie budget, you realize, oh, okay, well, we can't do these scenes. To rewrite these scenes because we can't afford this, and we can't do all these locations because we don't have enough days to shoot them, so I have to consolidate these. So there was a great learning curve to this movie, and I'm very happy with how it turned out. I mean, it's just not a horror. I think it's a really solid mystery that's got like really good, like people that don't like horror movies would really like this movie. Like it's just a good mystery, but it's got like elements of faith in it and karma and how we treat each other and society and blah, blah. Crammed a lot of shit in there. Beautiful black lead actress, which I've been wanting to cast for a long time. But there were a lot of other hurdles we had to overcome because it's like, oh, we're shooting it for a certain budget. Right. So now I know why some of my movies don't turn out like the script I had in my mind, because you don't have the money to shoot it exactly like you want to. So it was great, but it was also a very humbling and good learning experience for me too. Because even directing a short, it's just, I love how the short turned out, but it's just not the same as doing a feature. There's so many more moving parts and so many more people, and every day it's like trying to get your shots, but you're also dealing with everything that life can throw. Oh, it's going to rain tomorrow, so we can't shoot. We had to reserve a park through the government for this day, and now it's raining. You can't shoot there, so we have to go shoot somewhere else. Okay, now we have to drive 2.5 hours from where we are to go shoot in the hospital, the scene that we were going to shoot like 3 weeks from now. So our actors don't know all their, haven't memorized their long speeds. There's a lot of that stuff going on where you're just like, ugh. But it was fun. I had a lot of fun doing it.
So does it make you look forward to the next one that you're going to direct, or?
Yeah, because like I said, I feel like I've learned so much from doing the last one that I feel like I'm ready now. Like I'm glad the first one wasn't like people just give me a budget to do what I wanted, because then I would have probably just had an easy experience. And I think I needed to. This was a fun, but again, just guerrilla style filmmaking.
Yeah.
You just learned so much more doing that.
I don't know I know the budget makes problem solving slightly easier, but of all the directors we've talked to, they all kind of have the same answer of, more budget, more people, more time, but every project has so many hurdles. They're all just tough.
Yeah. I think with bigger films, if there's a problem, a lot of times they'll just throw money at it. And on our film, when you're doing an indie film, you can't throw money at it. You've got to figure out a way out of it. And sometimes that can help you come up with some creative stuff. But if you're on a tight time schedule too, it's like you're worrying about, okay, I've got to get all my shots in today because we have to get this before the sun comes up, and we have to do this because we're losing this actor in 2 days. So if we don't do this today, we can maybe do that tomorrow, but then we'll have to switch people. So there's a lot.
So Don't Look Back really quick though. So it's on VOD, so they can watch it on Amazon,
iTunes, Vudu, YouTube. Don't get it illegally on YouTube, but pay for it, please, or rent it. Okay. You can, any of the VOD sites you can.
I think DirecTV, all of those have access to be able to watch it.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, I have to ask about. So you were talking about earlier about selling treatments. And then
I thought you were going to ask more about gay stuff. Go ahead, back to the treatment.
I can't.
No, I was just kidding.
You were talking about selling treatment. So this is kind of an evolution of the business kind of question. And the business has changed so much in the last 30, 40 years, as goes without saying. It's changed monumentally in the last 5 to 10, right?
Yeah.
they don't particularly pay for treatments anymore. They don't particularly pay for people to develop things anymore. They want you to develop it and bring the project to them, right?
Yes,
Joe
absolutely.
Dante's talked about making a fine living, not making it. George Romero talked about the 90s. He never made more money than he did in the 90s, not making a damn thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
It's crazy. Like, yeah. And then in the 90s, you could go in and pitch like, a sentence to somebody and they freaking buy it off of you, and I got spoiled with treatments, because I could write like a 5-10 page treatment of a movie and sell it. And now literally it's like they want this, they don't only want the script, but they want you to have an attachment.
Yeah.
It's like, they're like, we love the script, but if we just need like an A-lister attached, it's like, but isn't that your job? Call me crazy, but when I worked at New Line, that's what we used to do.
That's what that's how the industry has changed.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, in your day in and day out as a working screenwriter, now director, so how many screenplays are you writing a year? And what I'm kind of curious, if you could I'll talk about the audience, just I'm assuming monumental amounts of scripts you've read or written that probably won't be shot anytime soon.
Yeah.
That you've made hopefully money off of, but have never will see
the light of day.
Yeah.
That's really sad.
I didn't mean for it to be, but
That's okay. You're triggering me again. This is bad touch. Bad touch.
I'm so sorry. But you have the perfect sausage. Remember?
Don't victim blame me. Sorry, people.
No, they'll love it. We do have listeners who are curious about getting into screenwriting, and they're always curious about the actual how it works.
Yeah. Well, everybody's got their own process for writing. I find myself, because I'm trying to get so many things going off the ground at the same time, that I find myself like multitasking, which I know a lot of writers don't do, which is fine. Like they can zero in on a project, but it's like, I have to turn in my Usagi script by next week, but I've also got to do a rewrite on this other project. And I'm working on a new project that I've got to, but then the last couple of days I haven't done anything because I've been watching, 2 days. Been watching.
Talking to rednecks in Kentucky.
Talking to some rednecks in Kentucky. And they were just all over my sausage. But what I tell writers is, first of all, you do have to write.
Yep.
If you're a writer, you write. And that's one thing nobody else has control over. You should pick if you're going to be a screenwriter, you should pick a genre that you would love working in for 10, 15 years. If somebody says you can only work in one genre, you should pick one, because this is a business. And for people to remember you, they have to know what lane you fit in. So I know it works against every creative instinct we have, where we want to show people that we can write anything, or if we're an actor, we can do anything, but they have to be able to brand you and market you.
Mm-hmm.
And they need to remember you, because, so when people think of me, they think of Final Destination, they think of horror. Obviously Usagi is not a horror thing. Mm-hmm. So I'm working in a different genre now. But, you need people to connect you with like what your work is, because the first thing that you do that gets noticed is what they're going to want more of. Like if your first thing is a horror project or a comedy or a drama, they're going to be like, bring us your next horror, comedy, or drama. And if you say, well, your first one's a horror movie, and you're like, I have a great comedy, you're like, yeah, but get us back to us when you have that horror. It just fries their brain. Mm-hmm. And even though, forget the studio systems, trying to get into the studio systems at this day and age, because it's, you just see what the studios are putting out. It's always like sequels, remakes, big book IPs. Like if they do an original film like Tenet, it's got to be with Chris Nolan.
Yep.
Who's done like huge films. But the good thing is there's a ton of companies out there that have deals at studios. You can shoot films now on a friggin' iPhone that's 4K. Mm-hmm. You can build your own audience on YouTube and sell stuff get stuff up on Amazon. If shorts up on Amazon, there's a way to get your work out there, but you have to keep working, and you have to keep growing, because that's the biggest thing. Because I'm learning every time I write. Like every time I write, I hopefully get a little better. And I know a lot of writers where they're like, this is my first script and it's the best script you're ever going to read. And they really believe that. And it's like, you have to believe that to have that faith in yourself to kind of keep you going through the rough times. But if you're any kind of artist or any kind of craft person, you know that you get better the more you do something. Mm-hmm. you're a baker, your first cake is not going to, that you make is not going to be the best cake in the world.
Right.
Your mom might say it's the best cake because that's your mom. But, you know, as writers, you have to learn to be like open to constructive criticism, figuring out how to sift through criticism to find out when it's constructive and when it's just somebody trying to tear you down. But you have opportunities now if you're a writer to like write stuff and then find friends who are directors and actors of friends of yours and like do a short. You know, you can start showing people your work and building a kind of an audience that way instead of trying to rely on, you know, coming to Hollywood and, you know, spending all your money for a one-way ticket.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have to end up like selling your ass on Santa Monica Boulevard like I did. It was horrible.
But you had the
I
perfect.
I had a nice ass when I was
and
young.
the perfect sausage.
And I will, and to bounce off your story,
And to
my
bounce off his
mother would
ass.
never. My mother has never told me I made a good cake.
Now, honest to God, when you were saying that, I almost made the joke of maybe your mother.
Yeah.
We're damaged folks. Sir. damaged folks. But that I was going to ask one other question, but you actually said something that leads me to, in this business now, would you still encourage people who want to be screenwriters to move to Hollywood, or would you tell them to stay where they're at and do it?
I mean, no, honestly, I at this point I wouldn't. I mean, I know again it's because the industry's changing so much. I know that when back in the 90s, you know, when I sold Final Destination, I wish I'd come out to Los Angeles because that just would have been, I just sold a movie and they're making it, you know, like, so there would have been some jazz around me. And the thing is, if you get a big project picked up or something, yeah, it doesn't hurt to come out here and make the rounds. But there are film centers that are, you know, Atlanta's big, you know, they're shooting stuff in Florida and North Carolina. They're shooting stuff all over the place. And you probably will have to come to Hollywood at some point, you know, in your career. And it certainly doesn't hurt, but you don't have to be in Hollywood to have a career. Texas has a big film community, a great one. So, you know, if you're an artist, and I used to feel like every time I'd say that I have to roll my eyes and not be pretentious, but if you're an artist in any craft, your goal is to have your voice heard, have your work seen. That's what you want, you know. So there's so many ways to have that happen now, where back in the old days, there was a studio system out here in Hollywood, and you would get stuck into the studio system and they would like do all this stuff for you. But that's just gone by the wayside now. Like, again, the big studios, their New Line got absorbed by Warner Brothers. First Time Warner first Ted Turner picked it up, then Time Warner, then Warner, you know, it's like, they're just like these behemoths, you know, these big, I don't even know if that's the right word. I hope it is, because I don't feel smart. Good. I'm so smart.
Go ahead.
But yeah, you don't have to go. You can find film communities anywhere. Just about, I think, creating work, because if somebody finds your work, like, you know, Lights Out, you know, James Wan saw that and just loved it and decided he was going to make a feature out of it. So you can do that anywhere. You don't have to be in Hollywood to do that anymore.
Yeah. That leads me, because so you just said the word artist, and I was watching some interviews with you, like I said, trying to prepare for today, and you didn't want to be called screenwriter, writer, or you director now, or someone who acted a little bit as well. You wanted to be called an artist. And I don't know that. Yeah, you did.
Did I really say that in an interview?
Yeah. You said you.
Oh my God!
You said it's going to
really
sound pretentious.
Me right now.
You want me to send you the link?
Oh my God! No, I don't even want to hear. That's so pretentious.
But I'm not asking why. I actually didn't think it was pretentious, because I've met many different folks, and they might say artist, they may say writer. I tend to like the answer storyteller. I think that's kind of what we're doing here. But I was wondering why you picked artist.
I have a feeling that somebody said, oh, would you rather be called a writer or a director or an actor? And then maybe I said artist at that point. It's funny the way you said it. I just imagine myself sitting on some big couch.
No, not at all. Not at all. It did not.
Down on going, you know, the cigarette and the top hat going, call me an artist.
No.
Don't call me just something like that.
In my day, they all had faces.
Yes. So I think I probably, because I do still I love writing, I love directing, I love producing, I love acting. I think that, I think the other person was asking me to like which one I wanted to be identified.
Yeah. And you picked
Yeah.
artist, and I was
And
curious.
I think it's just because it's more, I think it's more encompassing of what we do. Like, I'll still hopefully act at some point. I'm obviously not going to be, the pretty teenager getting murdered anymore. I might be the.
Don't put yourself down. You can still be the middle-aged pretty person getting.
I know, but not the teenager. That's the point.
Oh, but I'm in my 40s. I don't want to see that shit anyway. I want to see middle-aged people get murdered.
All right, so maybe can get myself killed and still act some more. But I enjoy directing. I enjoy writing. I would love to act more and direct more too. So yeah, I think artist is just more encompassing of different. Because I know when I'm talking to people a lot of times, it's like, well, our audience, they're mostly screenwriters, or they're mostly directors, or they're mostly actors, and so I think artist just kind of encompasses all of us, including musicians and people who can draw.
Yeah. Jeffrey, this has been an absolute pleasure.
Well, for you, maybe.
We have had a wonderful time.
It took me a minute. It took me half a second to realize he just did that.
Yeah, he just called that fat guy an asshole.
I did not. And how dare you?
I love the fact that you've had a great sense of humor. I love the fact that you came from Breathitt County and did this. And I admire you, sir, so much. And it has been an absolute pleasure and an honor to have you on our show finally. I'm glad it took a while, actually, because I think it ended up being better. I asked probably some questions that were a little long, but I think it ended up being better. So thankfully,
Joe's beard has hit all the saliva coming out of his mouth from all the mentions of sausage.
Basically.
The good thing is too, now you have my actual email, because so now, yeah, you guys can have me back on the show anytime, of course. Like, I'm sorry it took so long.
Oh, don't apologize. Don't apologize.
No, you apologize. You apologize to me right now.
I told Todd the same thing, and we it's absolutely fine. So it's just always a funny joke to me. I was telling my wife yesterday. She goes, "Oh, you got Jeff?" And I said, "Well," she said Jeff, and I said, "Yeah, I got Jeffrey Reddick." And she goes, "Oh," and I said, "Yeah, the two people. It took us 3 years." I was like, "Oh shit, they're from Kentucky. They'll say yes. No, we've got that connection." So it's. But
I'm so easy. I would have said yes. I just forgot.
No, it's funny.
I've got so many people out there that I said yes to, and they're just sitting around probably waiting, going, "Where the hell is this guy?" I just forgot. Just keep asking me. So,
well, I want to remind our folks that you've got Don't Look Back right now on any VOD. Go out there, watch it, check it out. Give Mr. Reddick all your money, or at least most of it.
You don't have to give me all your money. Just a little love.
Just rent the.
I have an OnlyFans page, so they can send me it's just me typing.
Perfect sausage.
It's just it's just me typing. So it's very soothing. Watch me type for an hour or two.
That is a very niche. That's a small market if somebody's going to pay to watch somebody type.
There's got to be an audience for that.
Oh, there's an audience for everything.
There has to be.
There has to be. No. There has to be. But before we go, is there anything else that you've got coming out that you want to talk about, or just?
Well, I did produce a film called The Call. It has Tobin Bell and Lynn Shay in it, and that also just came out on VOD. And that's an awesome movie. It's straight up horror. Like, mine's more of a mystery thriller, and The Call is just straight up awesome horror film. So you can have a double dip of Reddick. I can probably make that sound a lot dirtier if I tried. But
I loved it.
Okay, that was dirty enough. Okay. So yeah, you can watch. Those are two things I'm really excited about, and you can just follow me on Twitter, Jeffrey A. Reddick, just to kind of keep up with what I'm doing. But I just thanks for having me on the show. I definitely, hope everybody stays safe, and I know it's a stressful time with all that's going on just in the world. So hopefully everybody's staying as stress-free and as possible.
Hopefully by the time people are listening to this, they're going to go, I don't understand why Joe was so worried about this election. Clearly, Petulant Pumpkin didn't win. I hope that's the sentence that people are uttering in their car while driving while listening.
I have a feeling it will be. Otherwise, I'll eat my words on your show.
Yeah, we'll have you back, and we'll talk.
Actually,
you know what we should do is have you and Todd at the same time.
Oh, that would be awesome.
He would be up for it.
Yeah, he would
All
be.
right.
Yeah, I love Todd. Absolutely, would love to do it. And tell Bobby when you see him, give him a big hug for me, and be like, Jeff used to have a crush on you.
Can I give him a kiss too?
Oh, well, then I'll get jealous, but you can do it if you want.
I'll tell you.
Just don't tell me about it. No,
Well,
you can tell me about it. Then I'll just get jealous.
I'll stop recording. I'll tell you a story I can't tell on here. All right.
No matter what you tell me, this is going to make it sound really bad for Bob.
Yeah, I know. It's not really that bad. All right. Well, this has been Bonehead Weekly. Thank you so much, Jeffrey.
Thank you all.
Uh-huh.